If you're someone who seeks only easy stories, filled with constant drama and no room for reflection, then this video is not for you. But if you're someone who longs for deep connections where the smallest gestures can change the world, and lost souls can find love, then this is the story you've been waiting for. The wind howled across the barren expanse, dragging with it the whispers of forgotten names and memories long since buried beneath layers of ice. Snow fell in silent sheets, wrapping the world in a cold, suffocating embrace. Amidst this endless white, a lone figure trudged forward, each step heavy, as if the weight of existence itself pressed upon his shoulders. Nathaniel did not know who he was. The name Nathaniel was but a faint echo in his mind, a fragment clinging to the edges of oblivion. His past was a void, devoured by the merciless cold that gnawed at his bones. Days and nights blurred into a single, unending moment of survival. There was no purpose, no destination, only the endless march through a world that had forgotten warmth. The landscape around him was a desolate sea of snow and jagged stone, where even the sun dared not shine with kindness. The wind spoke in a language of solitude, each gust a reminder that he was utterly alone. Until she appeared. Through the veil of snow, a figure emerged, graceful, almost ethereal. Her silhouette swayed like a fragile flame against the storm's fury. As she drew closer, the veil lifted, revealing skin of shimmering emerald, as if carved from the heart of a jade stone. Her hair, silver as moonlight, cascaded over delicate shoulders, and her eyes glowed softly, like twin stars lost in a darkened sky. Nathaniel stopped, breath hitching in his throat, not from fear, but from a strange, inexplicable pull. The woman approached with measured steps, her gaze gentle yet piercing, as if she could see beyond the tattered remnants of his forgotten soul. "You are cold," she said, her voice a melody carried by the wind, soft, soothing, and foreign. Nathaniel could only nod, though the chill he felt was no longer just of the body, but of a heart long frozen by solitude. She stood before him now, close enough for him to see the faint glow that traced her veins like threads of light beneath her skin. There were no words exchanged beyond that simple observation, but in that moment, something unseen stirred between them, a fragile thread woven from shared loneliness. In a world devoured by ice and silence, her presence was a flicker of warmth, a promise that perhaps even the coldest winters could be thawed. And so began the story of a man without a past, and a woman from the stars, two souls adrift in the snow, bound by a meeting that neither fate nor memory could have foretold. The wind had softened, though the cold still clung to Nathaniel's skin like a second, merciless layer. He stood motionless, his breath a faint mist in the frigid air, eyes locked on the woman before him, the strange, beautiful being whose presence felt less like chance and more like destiny's quiet whisper. Without a word, Elora reached into the folds of her shimmering robe. From within, she drew out a simple object, a worn blanket, its fabric aged but carefully kept, threads glimmering faintly as if they remembered every hand that had ever touched them. Her slender fingers unfolded it with a grace that made the act seem ceremonial. Stepping closer, she draped the blanket around Nathaniel's shoulders, her touch feather-light, deliberate like a painter completing the final stroke of a masterpiece. The warmth was immediate, but it was not merely the warmth of fabric against skin. It seeped deeper, reaching places within Nathaniel that the cold had long claimed. His heart, dulled by endless solitude, stirred for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Elora's gaze softened as she adjusted the blanket around him, her hands lingering for a moment longer than necessary. "This is not just cloth," she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of ancient kindness. "It is a promise that even in the deepest winters, no soul should face the cold alone." Nathaniel's fingers brushed over the fabric, feeling the delicate weave beneath his calloused hands. He could not explain why, but the touch of this humble gift sent ripples through the fog of his forgotten memories. Faint images flickered, glimpses of warmth, of laughter, of a world where hearts were not encased in ice. His throat tightened, unfamiliar emotion welling up like a spring beneath frozen ground. He looked at Elora, words failing him, but his eyes spoke of gratitude he did not yet fully understand. She smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips that held neither pity nor expectation, only the quiet assurance of someone who gave simply because it was right. "Where I come from," she continued softly, "we believe that to give warmth is to share one's spirit. This blanket was given to me when I was lost. Now, it finds you." Nathaniel swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over him like the very fabric she'd placed around his shoulders. In this desolate world, where even the wind sang of abandonment, Elora had offered him something he hadn't known he needed: care without condition. For the first time, Nathaniel felt something thaw within him. Not just his body, but the brittle shell around his heart. The cold, ever-present, and unyielding, seemed to retreat, not defeated by fire, but by the quiet resilience of compassion. As they stood beneath a pale sky, snow still drifting around them like forgotten dreams, the night was unnervingly still, save for the faint crackle of frost creeping along the edges of the shelter. Nathaniel lay beneath a worn blanket, its subtle warmth guarding him against the bitter cold. Yet, it wasn't the chill that stirred him awake, it was something deeper, something stirring within the shadows of his mind. His eyes snapped open, heart pounding with a rhythm he couldn't place. There, in the darkness, images began to flicker, ghosts of a life forgotten. A name. Nathaniel Walker. The words escaped his lips in a whisper, foreign yet familiar, like a song half remembered from childhood dreams. He sat up abruptly, breath visible in the frigid air, as fragmented visions flooded his thoughts. Faces without names, laughter echoing from distant memories, the warmth of a sun he could no longer recall. A hand reaching for his whose hand? A promise made beneath a sky of blue, now replaced by endless gray. The rush of recollection was not gentle, it came like a river breaking through a dam, overwhelming and chaotic. His chest tightened, torn between relief and fear. Who was he beyond this name? What life had he lost to the snow? The blanket slipped from his shoulders as he stood, unsteady, his legs weak beneath the weight of awakening. The cold bit at him, but he scarcely noticed. His mind was ablaze with fragments too many to grasp, too fleeting to hold. A soft sound drew his attention. Turning, he saw Elora sitting quietly by the dim glow of a crystalline lantern, her silver hair shimmering like liquid moonlight. She watched him not with surprise, but with a calm understanding that eased the storm within him. Their eyes met, and in that silence, she spoke without words. He stumbled toward her, confusion etched across his face. I remember, pieces, my name." Elora offered a gentle nod, her lips curving into a serene smile. "The snow does not bury what matters forever," she said softly, her voice wrapping around him like the blanket had hours before. Nathaniel sank to his knees beside her, his hands trembling not from the cold, but from the weight of rediscovery. Why does it hurt to remember? Because memory is not just light, Elora replied, her gaze distant, as if recalling her own forgotten pains. It carries the shadows too. But even shadows prove that light once existed. For a long moment, they sat together in the quiet hum of the frozen night. The storm outside had lessened, but inside Nathaniel, a different storm raged, one of identity, of belonging, of a past clawing its way back. Yet amidst that turmoil, something else took root. Each glance toward Elora, each shared silence, wove an invisible thread between them, a connection not born of memory, but of the present. Nathaniel realized then, as his heart began to steady, that while the past was a puzzle he might never fully solve, the warmth beside him was real and immediate. Elora did not press him with questions nor offer hollow comfort. She simply remained, anchoring him in a world that felt like it could drift away at any moment. And in that fragile stillness, beneath a sky heavy with snow and secrets, Nathaniel felt the first stirrings of something unexpected, a quiet affection, delicate yet undeniable. It wasn't spoken, nor was it fully understood. But as he leaned slightly closer to her presence, he knew. The journey ahead was no longer his alone. In the days that followed, the snow no longer felt as heavy, nor the cold as cruel. Nathaniel and Elora moved through the frozen world like two threads woven into the same tapestry, silent, seamless, and inseparable. Words became unnecessary, for in every glance, every shared breath beneath a pale sky, they spoke a language far older than speech, a language of presence, of quiet understanding. When Nathaniel reached for a piece of driftwood to stoke the fire, Elora was already there, her slender fingers brushing against his. Neither pulled away. Instead, they lingered, allowing the warmth of that simple touch to say what neither dared to voice. The blanket, once a mere shield against the cold, had become their shared sanctuary. Draped over their shoulders during long, silent evenings, it wrapped not only their bodies but also the fragile bond that had blossomed between them. It was no longer just fabric, it was a cocoon where two lonely souls found solace. Nathaniel would often catch himself watching Elora as she moved gracefully through the shimmer of frost-lit mornings, her silver hair catching the first light like strands of dawn itself. In those moments, he felt an ache not of pain, but of something tender and profound. A feeling that perhaps, even in a world stripped of memories and warmth, love could still take root. Elora, too, would glance toward him when she thought he wasn't looking, her luminous eyes softening with a quiet affection. She never rushed the delicate thread that bound them, she simply let it weave itself, trusting that the heart knows its own pace. They shared meals in silence, the flicker of firelight dancing across their faces. They walked side by side through the snow-laden paths, where each footprint was a testament to companionship rather than survival. There was no need for grand gestures, each small act, each unspoken moment, was a vow in itself. One evening, as the sky blushed with the faintest hue of twilight, Nathaniel found himself tracing the edge of the blanket where Elora had once folded it around him. He turned to her, finding her already watching him, her expression calm yet brimming with something deeper. "I don't remember much of who I was," he murmured, his voice barely louder than the wind, "but with you, I don't feel lost anymore." Elora's smile was like the first thaw of spring, gentle, inevitable. She reached out, her hand resting lightly over his heart. "Names and pasts are but echoes," she whispered. What matters is the heartbeat shared in this moment. Under the endless canopy of stars, they sat together, wrapped in their silent promise. The world around them remained cold and vast, but within that fragile space between two souls, there was warmth enough to melt even the deepest winter. And so, without declarations or demands, their love grew not as a blazing fire, but as a steady flame. A light that did not shout to the heavens but whispered to the heart. Here, in the quiet, we are home. The days had blended into one another, like snowflakes falling upon snow, each moment unique, yet seamlessly part of something greater. Nathaniel and Elora no longer counted time by the rising and setting of the pale sun, but by the quiet rhythms of shared existence. The silence between them had grown comfortable, a sanctuary where words were rarely needed and every glance carried the weight of 1,000 promises. The blanket, the simple, worn piece of fabric that had once been a gift of mercy, now rested upon their shoulders like a mantle of memories. It bore the scent of countless nights spent beneath starless skies, the faint trace of shared laughter, whispered confessions, and the warmth of two hearts learning to beat in harmony. One evening, as the horizon faded into a soft twilight glow, Nathaniel stood at the edge of a frozen ridge, the blanket draped over him like a second skin. Elora approached quietly, her footsteps barely disturbing the snow. She joined him without a word, her slender hand finding his with the ease of familiarity. For a long while, they simply stood together, gazing out across the endless expanse of white, a world that had once felt so empty, now filled with meaning only they could see. This place, Nathaniel murmured, his voice thick with emotion, should have been nothing more than a grave of forgotten things. But now, it feels like it holds every part of me. Elora's eyes glimmered in the fading light as she leaned her head gently against his shoulder. Because here, in this desolation, we found something that cannot be lost. Nathaniel turned to face her, his hand reaching up to brush a strand of silver hair from her face. His touch was tender, reverent, as if he feared the moment might shatter if he held it too tightly. I don't have grand words, he confessed softly. No vows spoken beneath temples or stars. But I know this: I am yours, Elora. In every breath, in every tomorrow this world allows us. Elora's smile was quiet, but it held a depth of galaxies. She lifted the edge of the blanket, wrapping it around them both, binding them together beneath its worn fabric. A promise made in warmth, she whispered, is stronger than any oath carved in stone. As the night settled around them, the wind carried no chill, only the gentle hum of a bond that had weathered the fiercest storms. The blanket, now more than just cloth, had become a symbol of their journey, a tapestry woven with threads of survival, trust, and a love that needed no grand declarations to endure. Beneath the quiet sky, Nathaniel and Elora stood wrapped in that simple promise. That no matter how the world might change, or how many memories might fade like footprints in snow, they would always find their way back to each other. And in that truth, they were forever warm.